Hey guys, in this video I'm gonna go over my 3.24 Necropolis Leaguestarter, which is gonna be a Rage Vortex Berserker. This build uses both Bladestorm to build Rage and have better clear, as well as Rage Vortex for big single target damage and destroying big packs. Melee is in kind of a bad spot in this patch, to be honest, but I think this build still does pretty well if you're like me and you prefer to League start as melee. Even with a limited gear, you can do a lot of content. In this gameplay, I'm using a 5-link Rage Vortex and a 4-link Bladestorm, and an axe with just over 500p DPS, and I'm around level 90 or so. So pretty much what you can expect within the first 1 or 2 days of the league, depending on how much you play. To level this build, you're gonna start off with Ground Slam, with Ruthless and Chance to Bleed support. Also pick up Ancestral Protector with Maim and War Banner, as well as Frostblink as your movement skill. And then Intimidating Cry and Leap Slam after Brutus. Then at level 12, when you have entered Merveil's Cave, you can pick up Sunder to replace Ground Slam. And you can use Sunder all the way through the campaign if you want, but I like to transition to Rage Vortex with Bladestorm around the start of Act 6. To transition, you need 2 4-links, 1 for Rage Vortex, 1 for Bladestorm, and enough sockets on the rest of your gear to fit in auras, totem, some movement skill. And you also need to have the passive skills on the tree. If you check the POB, there's a tree named Rage Vortex Transition, and that has all the stuff you need for like Warcry cooldown recovery and some stuff like that. In the POB, you will have progressive leveling trees, gem link setups for leveling, as well as mapping, all the endgame stuff as well. And I'm gonna go over the POB now. Okay, so here you're gonna have the progressive leveling trees. Going for Resolute Technique, and yeah, you can check out these at your own pace. This is the tree I was talking about when you can swap to Rage Vortex and Bladestorm around level 50. Yeah, at the start of Act 6-ish. But yeah, you want to make sure you have all the links and stuff like that, all the gem setups correct. Then here you're gonna have some the gem setups you have. For example, you're gonna get a Herald of Ash in Act 2 and then replace it with Pride in Act 3 or so. And I have some notes here that you can use to help yourself out. And yeah, that's the leveling process pretty much. If you want to use Sunder all the way through, you would probably use Fist of War later on, along with using Ancestral War Sheath instead of Protector, and go for more of a slam playstyle. But I recommend just switching to Rage Vortex pretty much as soon as possible, somewhere around Act 6, when you have the gem setups and this tree. And then it goes all the way up to starting maps, and have like a starting maps gear tree here, which Comb's Primacy is just a decent axe to start with if you want a unique option. I know a lot of people prefer that. It's also kind of nice. It has Culling Strike, so then you don't need Culling Strike in your links to here, for example. But eventually you want to get a rare axe that has just a lot better damage. Early on, if you have mana issues, because when you get into maps, you want to start using Determination, and that gets you on really low mana. So you can use this mastery right here to give yourself a little more breathing room if you find you're going out of mana. But as soon as you find a source of fist damage leached as mana, I don't think you're gonna have any problems. And then sort of in the main gear, if you are having problems later on, you can use the non-channeling skills, have total minus the total mana cost, or the Eldritch Implicit here for minus mana reservations. You also have this mastery here, which eventually you can remove if you notice you don't need it. But yeah, that's gonna depend on when you find this craft or whatever. But you don't need the craft, and you don't really need either of these implicits. It's just if you're having issues, these are some options. Yeah, pretty much the rest of the gear is very simple. It's just life, resist, suppression. You want to get as much as possible. It's kind of hard to cap suppress on this tree, but eventually as your gear gets better, it's very easy in the end game. But early on you might struggle to cap it. So for example, you can get a corruption on Dawnstriders for more suppression. And then I do have an end game setup here as well, but this is sort of the meat and potatoes of the League Start guide with this gem setup. So yeah, you can use if you have a 5-link, you can use all these. But you might not. There's a lot of socket pressure, right? Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you feel like you don't need Frostblink, and then eventually you can get a curse on hit ring. If you get enough minus mana on your jewelry, you can use Molten Shell without life tap. It's it's adaptable to your own situation depending on what level of gear you have. But there's always many solutions to mana issues and even to gem issues. Like you can just use a 4-link on the Bladestorm, for example, or you just use one movement skill. Like Frostblink, you don't really need it per se, but it is pretty useful. But yeah, if you have a lot of issues with the sockets, it's completely fine to cut something out, like cut out Culling Strike or something like that. But yeah, just to quickly go over all the links for Bladestorm, you want Bladestorm, Rage, Close Combat, and Fortify. And then Maim if you choose to go with a 5-link. Maim is the best DPS option. And then Frostblink, Blood Rage. For Rage Vortex, you want to get Pulverize, Rage, Close Combat, and then Brutality and Melee Fizz as your last link. But for most of the gameplay, for example, I was just, or all of the gameplay, I think I was just using a 5-link. Determination, Pride for your auras, as well as Blood and Sand. You switch between Blood and Sand stance a little bit. Sand stance gives more AoE, Blood stance more damage. Generally, you want to sit in Blood stance, I think, especially early on, because you still have pretty good clear in Blood stance. And then, of course, Intimidating Cry. So for the gameplay, you're mainly just Bladestorming to build Rage, and then you want to press Intimidating Cry right before you press your Rage Vortex. Otherwise, you will waste your exerted attacks on the Bladestorm, and you don't want to do that, because Rage Vortex gets the double damage effect for the totality of the duration. So make sure you're pressing Intimidating Cry before Rage Vortex. But it's fine to throw out a couple of Rage Vortex on just like packs of white monsters. It's completely fine to throw out a non-exerted Rage Vortex just for clearing. And then we have a Molten Shell setup with cast when damage taken and life tap. And I put vulnerability here just because I didn't want another button to press. And you don't have a lot of evasion early on anyways, so you tend to get hit and apply your vulnerability that way. But you can self-cast vulnerability, and then you can have it on higher level. But yeah, mind the levels here, so if you want to have it on cast when damage taken. And then Ancestral Protector with Culling Strike, and the Leap Slam with faster attacks. Leap Slam is the main way we're using to get around, basically. It's the fastest way. With Close Combat, you Leap Slam really fast. Okay, so I'm quickly gonna go over the end game setup here. This is just mostly so you can have something to strive towards. It's kind of up in the air. I'll probably switch some things up when I build this in the league, and I'll probably make a follow-up video. So yeah, in this version, I'm using Glorious Vanity over here for the same Immortal Ambition instead of Soul Tether for the Overleech. And that lets us use Bear's Girdle to get higher max rage. And I'm using Defiance of Destiny and going Iron Reflexes because Defiance of Destiny sort of feels the same function. And yeah, it's just a really nice defensive layer. And then in this setup, I'm using Storm Shroud with boots for full elemental ailment immunity, if that's something you want. And then if you choose to do that, you can take this Totem Master here and get the same effect from the Dawnstrider boots. And that also lets you use two. So both Ancestral Protector and Warsheep. This is the end game setup for the gems with like awakened stuff. And here I'm using vulnerability on a ring. That's a good option. I'm anointing Disciple of the Slaughter to have room for the Warchief as well, so you don't need Blood Rage. Yeah, I'd say the guide is mostly focused on the level 90 setup, but this is something, if you want to make upgrades, you can take a look at. You can choose if you want to have Deep Breaths or Measured Fury, depending on your playstyle. If you want to focus on just throwing out Blade Storms, or sorry, Rage Vortexes, you can use Measured Fury, but I kind of like Deep Breaths as well for the shorter cooldown recovery. For the main setup, yeah, I've been actually going back and forth with these. I think you should try it out for yourself, but they're both good. You could even, if you wanna, you could go for a setup that uses only Rage Vortex, and I have that here. It's also an endgame setup. And then you're using Comb Spirit and like Vitality on Arrogance to get some more rage regen. These gloves got pretty badly nerfed, so yeah, you can get vulnerability on hit on these as well, if you can find the corruption. But yeah, the meat and potatoes of this guide is the level 90 setup and the main gear and this mapping main setup. But yeah, I don't want to go on for too long. Hopefully this is a helpful guide if you want to league start the same build. The end game setup is just something to strive towards. It's not exactly written in stone. I'll make an update video in a week or so. The stuff here isn't too expensive anyways. Maybe Storm Shroud is, but this is a pretty cheap Watcher's Eye. The Green Nightmare is really good to help cap your spell suppression. But yeah, other than that, let me know if you have some questions and I'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, good luck on League Start.